How far do you go to get to the grocery store? Gas station? Primary school? Is it further than it needs to be? Could you be traveling less to get the services that you need? But do you prefer to get services from a certain place? These are a lot of questions, and they're all questions that can lend themselves to a GIS analysis. In the following project, Chris Quintanar does just that, diving into users of recreation courses and programs conducted by the City of Tucson Parks and Recreation Department. Findings from this project could help guide program planning in the future to fit the preferences of customers more effectively. Chris.
Thank you, John. I'm Chris, and unfortunately we're going to be not out of this world. We're going to be in lowly old Tucson. So, as John said, I did an analysis of the Parks and Recreation Department, the classes that they offer. This project was given to me by Jennifer Basilis, and basically she told me, Chris, find me something to help guide us for the future. So just to go into it right here, I have our plan for tonight. We have an introduction, methods, results, conclusion, the usual. So, an introduction to my study area, it is Tucson, Arizona. As of 2010, the county in which Tucson is located was at about 980,000 people living within it. And so the city government is dedicated to providing all the services needed for all these people. One of the departments is the Tucson Parks and Recreation Department, and they're responsible for providing recreational opportunities to the residents, whether it is through maintaining the parks or offering leisure classes. It's a very wide spread operation, and they try to do as much as they can for the people of Tucson. So here's a little map of Tucson, and as you can see that not only do we have Tucson here, but we also have Marana, Oro Valley, and Sahuarita, as well as the overall unincorporated Pima County. And if you recall from last night, Marana has actually grown in the recent years, and their population was included in this study because the classes are not only offered to people who live within city limits. So why does an analysis like this matter? Well, since Tucson Parks and Recreation Department is dedicated to serving the people of the community, the information from an analysis like this is basically geared for them. It's to give them information on where to make any changes that they need to make, see if they can better reach out to the community, maybe get more people to join in their classes. And so one of the biggest concerns is to make sure that everybody has access to their facilities. And this was the one that I looked at in depth with my analysis, although there was many different possibilities with the data set that was given to me. And so by mapping out customers and their relationship with their recreation facility, you can look at the spatial relationship between the two and determine if maybe a group of individuals are traveling farther than necessary to attend class. So the objective here was to first set up the data for spatial analysis. And the data in this was very complex. I don't have a snippet of it, but there was a lot of data, and I'll go into what exactly I was given in a second. But then the second objective, of course, was to analyze this data and test groups to see if there was a significant distance traveled by a particular group that customers were grouped by. So I wanted to show the recreation centers here. And as you can see, they're spread throughout Tucson, and the goal is to try and reach as many people as possible, and they hold many classes at each facility, and you can have classes being held at one recreation facility while being held at a different one at the same time. So the approach here was an exploratory analysis of this data, basically to determine a spatial relationship between the two, the customers and the recreation facilities, and to basically see if there was anything to report to TPRD. And the prediction here, of course, was that there was an attribute that we group the customers by that would clearly indicate that these group of customers are traveling farther than an average distance to attend classes. So the data and methods, here's a little introduction to it. First, I would receive shape files from other facilities in the parks, as well as for the city of Tucson, and the other piece of the data was Excel spreadsheets, and these were for the 2014 and 2015 customers who attended these classes. And the data, as I said, was very complex, so it needed to be broken down. And so by breaking it down, I used the things that I broke it down by as the things that I would group the customers by. So I had 3 levels. The first was age and time. The second was the brochure titles, and the third was the activity titles. And by this tree diagram, as you can see here, it gets a little more complicated. So basically, a brochure title is an overall arching category for an activity, which is essentially a class. So just to kind of give an illustration, I have 4 different customers here that are broken down. We have customer A here. They're less than 16 years of age, and they attend a sports class, and the class is called Just for Kicks. Then we have customer B who goes the opposite direction. They're greater than 16 years of age. They attend a dance class, and that is ballet and tap. And as we can see here, customer C can be grouped with customer A when it comes to the years of age. However, then they attend an aquatics class and go to lifeguard training. Then you have customer D who at first becomes grouped with customer B, but then ends up being grouped with customer A. However, their specific class is instructional badminton. And this is kind of the thing that I've encountered with this data. So to elaborate a little bit more, as I said, I got the shape files for the spatial reference, but the most important piece of this was the street network, which I used to place everything on the map. I geocoded all of the customers' addresses as well as the recreation facilities, and the spreadsheet data was the data set to provide all of the information necessary for that. So this is just for the year 2014. These are all the customers and their relative location. And I'm zoomed in here a little bit, but as you can see, there are like way many people on this map. So an analysis for both, or for the 2 approaches that I tried, began using the business analyst extension from Esri, and the extension has a feature called desire lines, which also are known as spider maps. Business analyst is designed to pretty much link customers with a specific store, and so in this case, it would be with the recreation center. This establishes a spatial relationship to test significance by, and I'll explain what the z-test is in a moment, but basically customers are grouped by attributes in these analyses, and we test their distances to see if there's any significant distance traveled. So this is a spider map, and this is for one of their brochure titles called Aquatics, and these are everybody going to their specific recreation center, and they're color coded accordingly. So as you can see, it's not feasible to really try and place all of this stuff on a map, so most of the analysis was actually done outside of the map. So the one sample z-test is the one that I used first, and this is just to test the level of significance between one attribute versus an overall average. And so in this case, we have customers, groups of customers, and their distance based on the average overall distance of the entire data set. And of course, the null hypothesis is that there was no group of customers traveling farther than necessary. Here's a little bit of what it looks like. Basically, this z-score here is just a point on a bell curve that would illustrate a level of significance. And we use this standard deviation equation to standardize all the distances to make sure that outliers are not affecting the data set too greatly. So the first analysis I did was the age-time attribute. I separated the people into 2 groups for age. There was less than 16 years of age and greater than 16 years of age. And then I also had the time, which was traditional versus non-traditional business hours. The assumption was that these attributes constrain the types of classes that people can take, the assumption being that it's not within a time frame, or if you're less than 16 years of age, you're unable to drive to your location. Unfortunately, these are the results, and as you can see, for 2014 and 2015, these results are very insignificant. In fact, they pretty much show that none of these groups are traveling any farther than the average distance of their given year. So I decided to break down the data into brochure title, basically applying the same method and trying to see if maybe a brochure title would have a more significant results. Unfortunately, also with this analysis, I again did not find anything significant. There are some that do approach a significant level of increasing distance, but none pass a threshold of 1.96, which is the normal Z statistic needed to say that something is significant. So I decided to go in a change of direction. I looked at the differences between the years by looking to see if maybe by looking at the differences between years, there would be a significant increase in the distance traveled. Prediction would indicate that, of course, there would be more people participating in this or a higher demand. So these groups that would be identified from this analysis would require attention by TPRD for future use. I use the same method of analysis, except I use a two sample Z test. Basically sort of saying the same thing, but instead of testing one attribute versus the overall average, I tested one group versus another. And this is a Z-test formula, basically doing the same thing, except you're just standardizing everything based on the two different years. So by looking at the brochure title analysis between 2014 and 2015, there are seven brochure titles here that show a high significant increase in distance traveled. And so this validates the reasoning to go into something more complicated like a activity title analysis to determine specifically which classes are the most increasing. So by looking at activity title, I find 26 of these classes actually have a significant level at 99%. So this means that all of these included here are classes that show a significant increase way beyond 2.58, which is the normal Z-score for a 95% confidence interval. And to kind of show here, you can see that one here is 93, another one is 32 and 17, and that's way, way above the 2.56 required. So these three classes here would probably be the most important to look at for the future. So just to sort of recap, we have the age time analysis, which showed no significant results. We also have the brochure title analysis for the individual years, which showed no significant results. So I looked at brochure title between the years, 7 groups. Activity title analysis showed 26 groups with significant results, 3 of these going well beyond the 99% confidence interval. And these are the classes that TPRD should probably evaluate in the future. And there are many more at the 95% confidence interval. They just wouldn't fit on the slide. So to discuss these sort of results, basically these indicate that there's probably a higher demand for these classes. There's more people attending them for whatever reason. And so this would be something that TPRD could use to start trying to analyze further to try and make changes to better serve the community. So in conclusion, basically I've summed up most of this stuff, but what I want to talk about is the fact that the next logical step now that I've identified these classes is to probably do some sort of qualitative analysis, look at why people are traveling farther, see if maybe the results from those specific surveys geared towards these classes would indicate that there would be a change that would need to be changed to better serve the people and maybe gain more people in the future. So Any questions?
Consider running instructor identities, like if they're following instructors and not just classes?
Well, I didn't have access to that data, unfortunately, in the data set, but that would be something that I would think would be a factor. There's many factors that you can take into account. I tried to do, when I was doing the age and time analysis, I was following some assumptions that people would be constrained by time or by available transportation to attend classes. So there's also, like you said, the instructors. I've heard from people who I've worked with that they like to go to specific classes because of instructors, or they like to go to a specific facility because they have they're set up to better serve whatever class they're at, or they're trying to take, rather.
And would it make a difference if you were looking at advanced beginning or beginning normal and advanced kinds of things where they have like particular classes for beginners which would have different, even though it's the same kind of activity, but advanced, did you separate those out?
No, I did not. And that's mainly due to a lot of the beginner courses are designed for younger people. And I kind of wanted to try and include as many people as I could. There was actually some there was some brochure titles that I omitted because they're held either at one time a year or they have to be held at a specific location that TPRD really has no control over.